Hello! If I haven't mentioned it yet this year, I am so glad that you could be here today. My name is Rich, the channel is called New Memphis, and this week we're actually not painting. We're going over the best models we painted in 2023 here on New Memphis. And I wanted to start off this way because there's a couple of ideas, such as basing ideas or painting ideas or just general artistic choices that I do want to bring back this year, making sure that we are ready to move into the next project, which I finally decided we're going to be doing Cruel Boys from the Dominion box set specifically, though also some Gabos thrown in as one big army. I have a lot to say about the Cruel Boys, and I know that a lot of people are not necessarily going to be excited about them. Mostly the big, true Warhammer 40k fans may not be excited, but they're very interesting models, and I have a lot to say about them in a future video, so stick around for that. And yeah, 2024 is going to be an exciting year, so thank you all for being here. Oh, also, I realized I made a mistake in last video. Turns out that Brewed in Holland is written right on the Heineken bottle. I actually did some research, and this week I know that we have a true German lager just to make my German ancestors very, very happy. When choosing what 10 models to use for this video, I wanted to specifically try to find 10 individual projects and pick the best models from them. Otherwise, my Kill Team Trader Guard would have taken up like half the list, and the Fallout miniatures would not have been far behind. I also wanted to make sure I selected models that would just be interesting to talk about and allow me to illustrate some concepts that I have mentioned but may not have fully explored. So, without further ado, let's get wait, oh no. Let's get started. Ah, Khorne, a boring faction with a bad paint scheme. There are two big artistic decisions that I made with this model that I really want to carry over should I ever paint future Khorne models. I want to make sure I use those purple undertones and those accents of white. Looking back on it, I actually found it kind of interesting that white accents aren't used more in Khorne models. All of Games Workshop's own paint schemes involving Khorne have the skulls painted in this beige gradient that just sort of blends them into the rest of the model, so you really don't get those individual pops of white. Everything has to be a sliding gradient until it blends together into mud. This model itself was originally one of the 4 Beastmen that we got from the Blackstone Fortress set, which are incredible models, but I may have already chopped up some of them in order to use their bits in other projects, including mounting their heads to the front of our ATV and one of our bikes from the Gene Stealer cult, so had to get a little creative. Their torso, pistol, and those tanks on their back are all just regular Cadian guardsmen. Well, Cadian shock troops, but whatever. While the head just came from the skulls from the Skull Throne pack. That right arm is from a Khorne demon, and what an arm it is. That red with the purple undertones just works so incredibly well. That's a combination I'm excited to use in the future should we paint a Khorne army. I really wanted to show the Beastmen as being low tech, so I didn't use metallics anywhere on them. Instead, I used deep yellow, which pops just as well against all of the earth tones like greens, browns, and then London gray that I used on all the body. Use of earth tones in the darker areas that I don't want the audience paying attention to is a scheme that you're going to see a lot. So like I said, this model gave me a lot of ideas if I want to paint Khorne in the future. It actually made me excited to paint Khorne in the future. And walking away from the model with a few fun ideas is all you can really ask for at the end of the day. So, with that in mind, let's move on to the next model. The small Warhammer Underworlds team that this model came from is, at least in my opinion, where my painting really started to come to its own this year. This one was primed in a simple oxide red that I picked up from the hardware store for a couple of dollars. And honestly, just with that red, a few touches of orange for highlights, and then a wash of dark Prussian blue, it worked fine. Honestly, if you want to do a 3-color minimum, you could totally just do that. Paint the bases in black and gray, and boom, now you're up to 5 colors. But that emerald just pairs so well with orange. This is where I started to fall in love with Vallejo orange and dark blue. They're just such good colors. And for anyone who follows Warhammer's typical grimdark scheme to the letter, I would love to introduce you to the magical world of washes other than black. He has this magical glow to him that's conveyed with that blue wash, and it just works so well. It feels like there's this energy emanating from them. I may not have much to say about this model because it's just that good simplicity. It's just fun, you know? It has some great effects. I look back on it fondly because it's where I really started wanting to experiment with using these oranges and blues, and so I will always love this model and this entire team for that reason. But There is another model that I think uses that wash even better. Purple on blue, a boring combination without a plan. This may end up being my shortest segment because it's the small color choices that really bring this one together. I remember getting through this entire project, or almost all the way through it, and just truly feeling like I had no idea where I was going. That happens sometimes. It looked good, but it didn't feel alive until those few touches of orange. My God, it just makes it just, yeah, alive is the best way I can put it. Bright, colorful, visible eyes are more important than all the tiny detail in the world. I also find it really funny that literally his hand and the book it's holding are the same color, but you'd have no trouble distinguishing them just because they have enough breathing room, enough shadows, whatever you would want to say. It's fine. The model is fun, I like it, and again, worry about making your faces distinctive and visible, not about trying to paint microscopic detail, and that's the thing that this model exemplifies in my mind, and why I love it. So, that's really all I have to say. But I do have a little bit more to say about theming over detail. Our first non-Warhammer model. I have very fond memories of the Ox just whipping ghosts and demons while playing this game with my friends. Betrayal at House on the Hill is an amazing game, and though I haven't played much of 3rd edition, 2nd edition holds a very special place in my heart, which is why I was so excited getting to have this channel where I get to repaint and rebase these models. You know, I'm not gonna make a living off it, but I get to show it off. That's cool. The models do technically arrive fully painted and based, but I don't need this model to look photorealistic for me to have a good time with my friends. I need this model to look like it just hopped off the screen at a cheesy 80s slasher movie. And in that regard, it succeeds gloriously. He looks like some 80s jock. He looks like Steve Harrington with a flashlight. I also do love that the simplicity of the skull worked out. I basically just painted it the same way I painted those floorboards, which was individually painting each of them with either pink, blue, or purple, and then drawing some orange from the ends of these, well, supposed to be floorboards, but they're just reused sprue, which God knows I always have a lot of that. Yeah, it could look better. Rather than trying to beat myself up, instead I'm just gonna move forward and I'm gonna say, the next time I do these, now I'll have practice. Because I actually am excited to use this sort of basing scheme in the future. I think it looks really cool, and I think that that orange just evokes wood more than it should. God, Vallejo oranges are just the best paints. And those heavy set black eyes and shadows really, they just look choice for this horror themed model. Anyway, I feel like I've gone on long enough about a model that has about 2 details in total. It looks great, it's thematic, so let's move on and head to another model that I'm very excited to talk about. So my regular viewers will know that I've talked before about the importance of directing the eye of the viewer. You want to essentially draw the eye inward toward the center or down, and then bring it out. And this is one weird thing about Zangors, is that all of their detail is concentrated right at the middle. I ended up just barely doing anything with it because it was the last place I wanted my viewers' attention being drawn. I specifically wanted the biggest, brightest details, which were that yellow, which I use on his eyes too, but most of it is way out on the ends here to help direct the eye. Okay, you get the point at this point. Sorry, I wish I could go in more into detail about this, but the vocabulary to talk about these things is somewhat limited, or at least mine is. So please forgive me if I'm a little rambly on some of these. These concepts are not super easy to talk about, but I'm trying to do my best here. Anyway, that's all I can really say about this guy, but I do have more to say about another model in the Chaos Pantheon. I never thought I would describe a Khorne model as beautiful until I finished this project. Fittingly, I kind of consider this model the enhanced version of our Beastmen from earlier, and I use a lot of the same concepts, though I did use more of an orange instead of a red. Once again, the undertones created by that purple wash look absolutely amazing. Here, going from the purple to the orange is a little more of a softer gradient that looks a bit more natural. It makes those orange areas look almost redder than red. And that description might sound really stupid, but it's the best one I can come up with, I swear. I love Khorne demons, which is strange considering how much time I spend shitting all over Khorne as a faction. But I really do genuinely think these models are underappreciated, despite already being extremely well loved by the community. It has this curvature where it's almost wrapping in and around itself with all of these different, oh god, just something about the lines in this model. They're just really, really good. And I don't think that Games Workshop's normal paint scheme for them does them any justice whatsoever. And that's what I wanted to bring across with all of this dry brushing, going from that yellow to white on the fins on the back and on the arms. All of it, like I said, feels like it's curving in and around itself, and it's so cool. I love these models so much. I really do, and I feel like paint schemes I see for Games Workshop and I see on Instagram, and even the designs from like Total War Warhammer 3 for the Khorne demons are incredibly disappointing because they just do no favors for the fantastic design of these models. This is one of those few models where actually using a shitload of gradients was actually a good thing. And then of course there's the sword, which turned out great. All it was a base coat of London gray along the actual blade, chips of turquoise, chips of a yellow, white along the perimeter of the blade, and then a wash of royal blue or dark Prussian blue. Anyway, the blades turned out really, really well, and that Vallejo blue-green on the tongue is just hideous looking because it just pops out from the rest of the model with such violence. It's so gross. And I love it, especially with that gloss varnish over that and the sword. It makes him look so unnerving. You can actually see these models in the background of the Space Pope video's thumbnail, and you can really just see them so distinctly. The use of color on these models just makes them stand out. And that's not even mentioning the undersides, which are German extra dark green, or was another dark, and then highlights of light green on top of that, which turned out amazing. Complete Hail Mary play, could have gone horribly, ended up turning out amazing. So that's great. Always good when that happens, because it doesn't always. So yeah, I guess that's the theme of this model, it was just a long series of complete long bombs. I don't know if this is gonna work, but it ended up working in every single one of those regards, which is just cool when that happens, and that's part of why I love this model. And I chose this one specifically because I liked this model out of the 5 the best, whatever. But when it comes to otherworldly pops of blue, there's one model that I know some of you have been waiting on that I think illustrates that better than any other. I'm surprised this model made the list. I mean, I'm not surprised that a model from this group was on the list. The Traitor Guard were always going to be on here in some capacity. Again, they may have taken up like half the list if I had let them, but I only chose one. And of course it had to be Metalhead, whose name I chose for the sake of this video. You'll once again notice the use of earth tones to make sure that that gun looks very, very vibrant. I've never been good with OSL, but I still wanted to do something bright and interesting. If you want that gun to be big and bright and blue, you can't use blue anywhere on the rest of the model. I painted the entire gun with Iron Warriors, then painted the areas I wanted to be really, really bright, such as that barrel, with white. Then gave the entire gun a wash of white, gave the entire gun a wash of blue, and then filled in all of the flat areas and the skull and some of the other details with Iron Warriors once again. Yeah, it's a couple of steps, but it's super easy to remember, and it will work great for an army of guardsmen. Whereas trying to do OSL for every guardsman, most of whom have very different poses, especially in the case of these traitors who are a kill team, so they have a ton of detail, would have been completely obnoxious and was just never gonna happen. And yeah, I'm not sure I have much else to say about this, but I love the way it turned out. It was a first true attempt, and I think I've done better since then. Janus's rifle, which is done with orange instead of blue, I think turned out better, but this is still the one that I look back on. Again, much like the humble Gabo, it was a first step toward doing something much better later, and I'll always look back on it fondly. And I had a couple people say that they wanted to use this scheme for the guns in their own guardsman army, which is awesome. Thank you guys. I'm just glad to know that I can help. Part of my goal is always trying to create these simple schemes other people can copy. And let's move on to the next model. Yeah, I made up that name for this list, but I'm sticking to it. While the Traitor Guard might be a great example of the black and blue next to each other, this model is a great example of blue and red being next to each other, because just the armor and the bronze is washed in a very thinned blue. blue, while the cloak washed with Vallejo's black red, which also became a favorite paint of mine throughout the course of this year because it just worked so well. This was my first time using blue and bronze, and it worked out very, very well. I do wonder if they would work on a darker model, one where the red was not there and the bronze had to sort of stand on its own. I don't know if it would work super well. If I remember correctly, the only time I even used black on this model was just for washing the base, and even then, only like part of it. For Age of Sigmar models especially, I want them to look bright because I just feel like that fantasy vibe demands that. Bright and colorful, but still kind of horrifying at the same time. This guy also did have some pretty stiff competition from other models within his Warhammer Underworld set, but it was that big cloak that just looks like it is bright like fire that really solidified his place on this list. It's just so incredibly good. And like I said, that pairing of the blue on the armor that looks so cool. I think it almost enhances the metallics to have it looking that extra bit cool with the fiery fabric right next to it. Something about that pairing just speaks to me on some level. I don't know, I guess I can only say so many times that it strikes a good balance between blue and red, but that's all I've got to say, so let's go on to the next one. And I'm pretty excited about this one. You guys, I love Fallout. I wonder if I've mentioned that before. And I remember getting a comment on the video where I painted these that was something along the lines of, "Man, I thought you were absolutely insane until you added that black wash," which I guess means I should be doing this. Apparently I'm doing a pretty good job. I don't know why, I just always found that so funny. I'm glad you liked the video though. Yeah, this is a bit of a weird project, and one where I push myself to kind of get out of my comfort zone and also push myself to use as few colors as possible, which was, you know, pretty easy for the guy or girl in power armor. The colors you see most are brass and azure, and what I really wanted was to make sure that it didn't look like armor that was just part brass and part blue. I wanted it to look like brass armor with fading azure paint over it. And striking that balance was, you know, I wish I could tell you that there was like an official procedure or like a way that I did it, but the honest truth is it was just patience. It was just painting and repainting and painting and repainting until I found a balance that I was really happy with, until it just looked right. And I did eventually strike that balance, or at least I think so, and it turned out really well. And the really funny thing that I love about how these Fallout models turned out, and why this list would be like half models from this set if given the opportunity, is their simplicity. Looking at the back of this model, all you see is that one little bright red detail of that valve. And it's so good. Like, are there other details that I feel like on here I could paint? Yeah, absolutely, I could, but it would draw away from the other detail. It would draw away from that one little focal point that just looks so funny and interesting on the back of the model, and I just love that. It's so good. This is one of those models where, no, it's not the most detailed, but you don't need that. I don't have much more to say about this model. I do have another 5 from the new California expansion that we're going to be painting sometime in 2024. Let me know down below if you guys want to see that really early, because I am excited to paint them. Anyway, we only have one more model to talk about, so let's get on with it, and it might be my favorite. I do love this model. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. It only occurs to me now that we've had 3 Khorne models on this list, despite how much I complain about Khorne as a faction and about their paint scheme. Maybe that says something about me. Luckily, this one actually does use brass, and it still pairs extremely well with that purple wash. Like, honestly, better than I would have thought. Maybe it is those orange hues of the brass allowing the purple shadows to contrast with it really well. Brass and red, terrible paint scheme. Brass and red with the white accents and with the purple undertones, incredible. Love it to pieces. I think it's great. And interestingly, this guy is also from the Traitor Guard kill team, so technically him and Metalhead could be on the same team, which would be very funny. And if I ever actually get around to playing kill team, I'll be sure to do that because I think it'll be interesting. While he may look big and scary, this was actually one of the easiest models to paint like of the year. Those big muscles take washes very, very well and are very easy to pick out. This was another one where I tried actively to keep it simple, and it worked really, really well. You know, I feel like if I spend too much time on this model, I'm going to be recounting the same things. Vallejo Orange is still incredible. Keeping your paint scheme simple, still incredible. Good color combinations are more important than all of the crazy detail and gradients in the world. Blah, 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 blah. I hope you guys get the point by now. That's all I have to say about this one. That is the last model on the list. Thank you guys for making it this far. Thank you. I hope this has been enjoyable and maybe a bit illuminating as I talk about things that I love in miniature painting. And it's been good for me to be able to sort of recount things I liked from the previous year before we move on to the next one, because I'm really excited for this project. I think you guys are going to like it too. And we're going to be doing just 10 gobos to start off next week. With maybe might do one of the stab grots too, just to kind of ease into doing Cruel Boys. Anyway, be prepared for that next week because we're gonna dive in head first, and I am really, really excited to. I hope you guys are ready for it too. It's gonna be exciting 2024. Thank you for being here, and I will see you guys in the next one. All right, finish this. I'll see you in the next one.